Schmidt Show here on News Radio 1029 KARN. I am your host, Brad Schmidt. Thanks for joining me this afternoon. 501-403-KARN is the phone number, 501-403-5276. If you want to join the conversation, be a part of the discussion. It is Juneteenth, of course, a very historic day in American history, and it was the day that the final announcement was made to the last remaining folks in Texas who were still living under slavery that they were actually declared free, and that the end of slavery had finally been announced to all in the United States. So it happened in Texas. Was it 18? All of a sudden, I lost my 1858. Was it 2 years following the Civil War? I think it was 1858. Now I'm all of a sudden questioning. I was certain up until I started to say it out loud. But yeah, so it was a very, very historic day, and we'll talk a little bit about it today. We'll talk a little bit about the history of it and some of that. We're not going to get too deep into it. It is an American holiday, but as like many other holidays, the 4th of July, we kind of talk a little bit about what the 4th of July is, and then we move on and talk about other things. So we'll do that today with Juneteenth. And also today, I ran across a really, really cool story. That was actually posted on Twitter by James Woods about another historic event during the Revolutionary War. So we'll talk a little bit about that and talk about that and how it also affected history and the history of the great nation in which we live. So that was also on June 19th as well. In fact, it was the day that the Continental Army left Valley Forge in pursuit of the British Army. So we'll talk a little bit about that, as well as talking about Juneteenth as we go on through the day. A few of the other stories that we're going to talk about today, a few of the other topics in the news, if you will. This 10 Commandments law that has been passed in Louisiana. As a former pastor and as a person who believes in Christianity and the Bible and all of those sorts of things, I get it. I understand the desire behind it, but at the same time, it seems like such an exercise in futility. As we look around the world and we look at inflation and we look at all of the issues we're facing with tax rates, out of control federal agencies, the economic situation, it seems to me that this is a complete and utter waste of time. And in all honesty, instead of requiring the 10 Commandments to be displayed in school as part of some sort of government mandate, why not just do your best to allow the 10 Commandments to be displayed in your life? This is a bit of a departure for me in the past, because I used to think it was a good idea to have the 10 Commandments posted in public spaces and things like that, to remind people of what the 10 Commandments are, and to remind people that every one of the 10 Commandments, whether you're a Christian or a Jew or any other religious persuasion, doesn't really matter. Modern American law, most all of it was based on the Judeo-Christian principles illustrated in the 10 Commandments. So I get it. I do. I mean, we can go through all of the 10 Commandments. You shall have no other gods before me, right? The way that plays out and how that influences American law is that it reminds us that no one on this planet is God. No one gets special treatment. A president doesn't get to be above the law. A senator, a congressman, a governor, a sheriff, a police chief, nobody gets to be above the law because you're not God. You didn't write the law. You didn't create the law. You didn't guarantee the rights of human beings that out of your providence as God have instilled in all humanity. You don't have that position, so you don't get to be above the law. That's how that plays out in American law. You shall make no idols. That plays out in American law as well. It plays out in that celebrityhood does not grant you any special privileges. It doesn't allow you to get away with anything that anyone else gets away with, much like the whole "you're not God" thing. The other place that kind of plays out in American law is that there is equal protection under the law. Everyone is treated the same and is guaranteed the same rights under the law. Taking the Lord's name in vain. We talk about vulgarity. There are certain standards of behavior in media that we all expect to be followed. There are certain rules within the FCC that there are certain things that I can't say. I can't say on the air without risking a fine or some sort of punishment and potentially being fired. It's a vulgarity law. It is, and it's not just about taking the Lord's name in vain, as in, stubbing your toe and, shouting Jesus' name in the middle of the night. But it's about decorum and professionalism and respect for your fellow man, that you don't behave in certain ways in public. Keeping the Sabbath day holy. A lot of the labor laws that we now have are based on the fact that back in the day, when we started talking about labor laws, we were talking about one of the things that was important was that people should be given a time to rest and recreate. So we passed all kinds of 40-hour laws, and if you work more than 40 hours, you get all sorts of time and a half and other benefits and things like that. Honor your father and mother. Until you're 18 in most states, I don't know what it is here in Arkansas specifically, but in most states, until you're 18, if you leave the house without your parents' permission, they can call the police and have you arrested and brought back home. There are other kinds of that's just one example. Truancy laws and things like that are about honoring your father and mother. Obviously, murder, theft, perjury, those are pretty obvious, pretty common. But even adultery, right? One of the even some of the civil laws, not necessarily the criminal laws, but when it comes to marriage and things like that. Adultery and breaking contracts and marriage contracts and things like that. One of those is adultery. That pretty much guarantees that you have grounds for divorce. That is based on one of the 10 commandments. The last one is covet. You shall not covet, right? Well, that one's pretty easy as well. You don't get to go take your neighbor's stuff just because you like it better than your stuff. Again, that adds to stealing as well, but there is no question that the 10 commandments are valuable. There's no question about the 10 commandments' value in American society. But putting them in the schools on a placard or a poster, I'm going to be honest, it's pointless. It does nothing. It's not going to reduce violence or criminal behavior in schools. It's not going to reduce bullying. It's not going to make teachers better teachers. It's not going to stop, teachers from teaching transgender whatever to your kids. It's not going to do anything. So instead, I would encourage you, instead of calling your congressman and calling your senators and writing letters and emails and begging them to put up the 10 commandments, do your best in your own life to live in accordance with the precepts and commandments of God. And leave everybody else alone. You know, there's the old saying, and I don't remember who it's attributed to, but some old preacher said, you know, everywhere you go, preach the gospel and if necessary, use words. That's kind of the concept here. Because this is going to end up at the courts, and it's going to get struck down, and it's going to get overturned. And now we've wasted a bunch of money, and the Attorney General of Louisiana is going to have to spend a bunch of money fighting this case that he knows he's going to lose. For what? For what? For being able to claim some sort of moral high ground in the political arena? It's laughable. Knock it off. Fix the things that actually need fixing and live your life in accordance with biblical teaching if you want. If you don't. It's not my business. I would prefer you did, but it's not my business. It certainly isn't the government's business telling you what to do. We'll continue. There's more to get to and a whole lot more. And it's actually going to be a little bit of a Free Speech Wednesday today. So we'll do that as we continue with the Schmidt Show next on News Radio 102.9 KRN.